So, Sonic Origins Plus is here, and you might have been expecting a first impressions, but I didn't think it was necessary for a game like this. Sonic Origins was controversial at launch to say the least, despite boasting some genuinely good quality of life improvements to these games. However, there were complaints about a lack of games outside the classic titles, pricing options being questionable to say the least, the unfulfilled promises of new playable characters, which led to reports of tension between Sega and the developers. It really was a mess, and that's not even including the fact that Sonic 3 had to have some of its music changed because of the Michael Jackson involvement. So yeah, controversial for sure, but I still thought that Sonic Origins was a great way to experience the classics for newcomers. It made these games far more accessible, which I think was the entire point. I think us long-term Sonic fans forget how difficult these games can be for newbies, and, game journalists. When Origins launched without a physical edition, I did raise an eyebrow, and yep, here we are. Hey, well, it worked for Mania, so I guess why not here, right? To be fair, I do like the reversible cover art. I got it on the Switch because I already had it on the PS5, and I thought, you know what, why not get this for some Sonic action on the go? So, shall we get started? This is my look at Sonic Origins Plus. Origins Plus includes 12 Game Gear titles for us to enjoy, and it's cool to see these back in action on modern consoles, although not much has been done to change these games. They did add a save option, however, for all the games, so you don't need to beat them in one sitting, and you can make things easier for yourself by saving anywhere you want, which is great for accessibility. The biggest addition to Origins, if you ask me, is a playable Amy Rose in all 4 main classic Sonic games. I think a lot of people saw this coming, but it's so cool to see this finally be a thing. Outside of racing games and Sonic Boom, Amy hasn't been playable in the main series since Sonic 06. And classic Amy, well, she's never been in a platforming game before. And to go against the grain here, I think she's great. Pressing the jump button in midair will allow Amy to swing a hammer around her to extend her attack range. If you hold it down, she will drop dash like Sonic. It's not as fast as Sonic's drop dash, but she swings a hammer in front of her for a few seconds, which can destroy spiked enemies. To those who say the hammer swing is no different to the Insta Shield, I say are we using the same ability? The Insta Shield allows for a, instant attack, but it only lasts half a second. Amy's hammer lasts until you hit the ground and makes a total joke out of boss fights. We also, finally, got Super Amy, but just like Tails, she's only considered super after collecting the Super Emeralds. The Chaos Emeralds just make her supercharged. When truly super, Amy can throw hammers to decimate anything. It's like the Hammer Bros suit from Mario on crack. I really enjoy playing through these games as Amy. Every character in the classic Sonic games has one thing that sets them apart. And considering you've got Tails and Knuckles for extra mobility, I really think this is fine as an alternative. We also got Knuckles officially being playable in Sonic CD, and in some stages being able to glide makes time traveling super easy, so I can appreciate that. His shitty jump isn't ideal for the vertical level design, but hey, it's something new. I think before we go over the content, we should just get the negative stuff out there because I don't want to spend the rest of this video bitching. Origins absolutely should have had more included initially. Bear in mind this whole Plus thing has been done before with Sonic Mega Collection, but the difference is Origins already had a fucking deluxe edition which cost more money to play, but that doesn't mean you get the Plus upgrade for free. How are they justifying that? Like, come on. Luckily, upgrading to Origins Plus doesn't cost too much, so that's something at least. Should there have been more games included? Absolutely. Regardless what you think of the quality of the other classic Sonic games, they all have their fans, and are important in shaping what this franchise will become, like Sonic 3D Blast or Flicky's Island depending on where you live. Yeah, it's not amazing, but it introduced things like the homing attack, and some of its music has been reused across the whole franchise. Knuckles Chaotix? Come on, this game still hasn't had a re-release. I know some of you might be thinking there's a good reason for that, but if quality is the issue, then Sonic Blast would like to know your location. What about Sonic R, letting us control most of the cast in 3D for the first time? Sort of. Sega Sonic the Hedgehog, anyone? Sonic Origins could have included all of these games to make it the ultimate collection, and I'm not sure why they didn't. What about more playable characters? Amy is cool to have, but what about Metal Sonic? Or better yet, Mighty and Ray. They just came back in Mania, and I think this was a golden opportunity to give them some more screen time. But they aren't here. Why don't the Game Gear games have new animated cutscenes? I know these take a lot of effort, but why not? Make them feel more crucial, you know? And while we're on the topic of the Game Gear games, what the fuck did they do to the audio? There's like this awful echo effect that sounds like they're forcing it to come out of both speakers, and it just doesn't work. I did notice it less and less as I went on, but it's still such a baffling choice. They also could have added the safety nets for new players of the Game Gear games, like being able to replay special stages, as it's pretty inconsistent to not have that feature here when it's in the Genesis games. The save feature helps, but it's definitely not as seamless. Finally, from what I've experienced anyway, I think the fact you still can't play Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles separately sort of blows. I know they are two halves of one big game, but that's not how everyone remembers them, and I'm sure there's some people who might want to relive the nostalgia of the separate games. A minor point, but one worth mentioning. Right, so with all that out of the way, I wanted to very briefly cover each game in this collection to sort of give you an idea whether you think this game is going to be something you're worth invested in. Maybe you've not heard of this game, or you wanted to try this one for ages but you didn't know what it was like. That's what I'm here to talk about, so let's get on with it, shall we? Sonic the Hedgehog is a classic that you should absolutely play, with this being the best way to do so with all the added content. It can be pretty hard on a first run and some stages don't really mesh well with the speed-based gameplay, but with infinite lives you'll make it through within time. I made a video going into this game a while ago, and you can get my full thoughts there if you can put up with my terrible mic. And yes, most of my footage is of Amy because I wanted to try out all these classic games. Sorry. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is amazing. Still one of the best games in the series and infinitely replayable. It's got amazing pacing and awesome stages. And again, you have infinite lives and can retry special stages to secure Supersonic and play in God mode. Awesome. Again, I have a video dedicated to Sonic 2 if you're interested in my full thoughts. Sonic CD is a game I think you have to be a fan already to truly enjoy. Don't make this your first choice. I wouldn't buy the collection for CD, but when you get what it has to offer and understand how it works, Sonic CD can be a total blast. Plus, the Japanese soundtrack is absolutely amazing. Got a pretty recent video on Sonic CD, so check that out if you need more convincing. Sonic 3 and Knuckles, to slightly jump the gun on this one, is an absolute masterpiece and is tied for being my favourite 2D Sonic game. It mixes speed and exploration perfectly and manages to provide a fun story with not a lot to work with. It's got the best special stages, tons of replayability, and I look forward to reviewing this game soon. However, it's worth noting that some of the music in Sonic 3 was changed from the original release due to the involvement of Michael Jackson. Yeah, I'm not kidding. The replacement tracks are remixes of the PC version's music, and they aren't great. But hey, if it's the cost of finally getting Sonic 3 on modern consoles, then I'm okay with it. So that's what was already there. Now onto the Game Gear stuff. Sonic the Hedgehog on the Game Gear is a little hidden gem of a game. I wish you could choose between this and the Master System version, but I really don't mind in this case as they mostly accommodate it for the lack of view. This game has a few shared zones with the Genesis game, but also has some unique zones to set it apart. It's nowhere near as difficult as a Genesis game can be for a first timer, and has a catchy soundtrack to supplement it, beyond the fucking echo. It has Chaos Emeralds to find in stages and only lasts about half an hour, but it's a fun time and worth checking out. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on the Game Gear? Ugh, absolutely fucking not. This game is done dirty on the Game Gear. Not that it's a perfect game on the Master System, but as I mentioned in my review of the game, being able to see more makes a world of difference. There's plenty that's really creative about Sonic 2 8-bit, but it's buried by painful level structures, annoying one-hit kill boss fights, and difficult to claim Chaos Emeralds. If you enjoy a challenge, then maybe this game will be for you, but not on the Game Gear. They really should have offered the Master System version, because this shit is painful. Sonic Chaos is like the total opposite. The game is extremely easy and pretty brain dead unless you go for the Chaos Emeralds. These are hidden by some pretty challenging special stages, but getting them all is superfluous. There's an element of exploration in the stages, sort of like Sonic CD. You need 100 rings to reach the special stages, so you gotta explore all around, but it's nowhere near as fulfilling of an experience. This game is quite the oddball in the series, and it's a tricky one to recommend. Sonic Triple Trouble, however, now this is the one to be on the lookout for. This is an ambitious Game Gear title with several moments that really aim to channel the energy of Sonic 3 into this handheld entry. There's fun set pieces, amazing 8-bit sprite work, and a real attempt to build on what Sonic Chaos offered with more detailed and more fulfilling level design. This is another one I'm excited to talk about in the future, but take it from me, Sonic Triple Trouble is not one to be missed. The last of the platforming games, we've got Sonic Blast, which, well, fuck me. I know you're not meant to judge a book by its cover, but man, I am judging. Sonic Blast is not worth your time. It's barely got any redeeming factors and really just exists. It also contains one of, if not the worst level in the entire franchise, Blue Marine Zone, an underwater level filled with tube mazes, hidden underwater currents, and so much lag it feels like you're moving in slow motion. This zone alone makes the rest of the game not worth playing, so unless you're really curious, just don't. Outside of platformers, we got some spin-offs. Tails Sky Patrol is a fun little game where you guide Tails through these obstacle courses using his ring to interact with objects and keep him in the sky. It's short as hell, but worth playing if you have the collection and fancy something a little different. The other Tails game included is Tails Adventure, which, believe it or not, is a bit of a Metroidvania. You explore this island Tails has recently conquered, I guess, trying to wipe out the threat of the Battle Cuckoos. It's not a traditional Sonic game by any means, there's not much speed to go around, but it's a clever use of one of the franchise's most well-known characters. Do I recommend it? That depends. I think if you're a fan of this genre, you may find something to enjoy here, but while it's never too confusing, it can get pretty bad with the backtracking. It's not a game I love, but it's one I appreciate. It's better than Sonic Labyrinth. Right, so you know what? Being honest, this game really isn't as offensive as people make it out to be. It's a short, isometric puzzle game, I guess, where you explore a bunch of areas collecting keys to progress to the next stage. You can't run quickly at any point, but you can spin dash, which leads to a hell of a lot of uncontrollable bouncing. It's not hard in the slightest, and again, it's like half an hour long, so is it really that bad? I don't think so. Sonic Labyrinth is completely negligible. It's not a system seller, but it ain't a deal breaker either. Okay, what's left? Sonic Drift 1 and 2. 8-bit Sonic racing games. I bet not a lot of people ever played these multiplayer, but Origins actually included split-screen multiplayer for both games, and Mean Bean Machine, but we'll get there in a minute. This gives some reason to check them out, as of course multiplayer adds value to any racing game. But in the case of these, it's more of a distraction if you're really bored. 2 is better than 1, but I'd play any Sonic racing game before these. That just leaves the 8-bit versions of Sonic Spinball and Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. These are games I'll be covering pretty soon when I go back to Sonic, so I guess this is like a snippet of things to come. Despite my dislike of pinball games in general, I've always had a soft spot for the Genesis Sonic Spinball. This praise doesn't extend to the Game Gear version, oh god no it doesn't. The aim of the game is the same, collect Chaos Emeralds hidden across the pinball tables in order to unlock the boss, but there's very little direction in this version. Things just seem to sort of happen here, making progression feel impossible. Beating even the first level for this video was really confusing, and I don't think this is worth playing Origins for. And it's shit that the Genesis version isn't here, especially because the mission mode screen is the goddamn Spinball Tower, what's that about? Mean Bean Machine 8-bit has it a little better. The CPU are assholes, but playing it with a friend is something you can do now, and it's Puyo Puyo. If you like it, you can't go wrong. That's your lot. Quite a few games to cover here, right? I think with all of this, Sonic Origins does manage to justify its price. Somewhat, anyway. I think this collection has been massively overhated. Is it perfect? God no, Mega Collection still has more in terms of content, but this collection has accessibility going for it. If you're a new fan of Sonic or you've never played the classics, I genuinely believe this is the best official way to experience these games. It takes the edge off some of the more archaic elements of the franchise, and offers plenty of replayability with all the new content. I'd say wait for a price drop, but the physical edition comes with a code that lets you download all the extra content not included in the base release. So if you want the Game Gear stuff and Amy, you'll have to get it sealed or download the DLC. I find that pretty scummy from Sega, I won't lie, but considering all the other commercial decisions around this game, I can't say I'm too surprised. I'm gonna get back to work on The Legend of Zelda. No more distractions, I promise. That will be the next video. So, thank you very much for watching, and I hope that you either choose to invest in Sonic Origins or, find another way to play these games. Because despite this collection, there's just so many great games here to play. Anyway, thank you very much for your time, and I'll see you next time.